Have you ever had a feeling that something bad was about to happen? A shiver down your spine, a knot in your stomach, a sudden urge to turn back? Most of us dismiss it as just a weird feeling. But what if it's something more? What if your body is trying to tell you something the world hasn't yet revealed? Welcome to WonderBox TV. Today, we're counting down 10 unbelievable true stories of people who sensed disaster just moments before it struck. These aren't just coincidences. These are real accounts from survivors who listened to that quiet voice inside and lived to tell the tale. From earthquakes to tsunamis to the tragedy of 9/11s, these stories will make you question everything you thought you knew about intuition. Let's explore the moments when a simple gut feeling meant the difference between life and death. Coming in at number 10, we have the man who skipped work on 9/11s. For one New Yorker, September 11th, 2001, began not with an alarm clock, but with a wave of overwhelming dread. It was a feeling so powerful, so unsettling, that he couldn't shake it. He was a dedicated employee, and calling in sick was something he almost never did. But on this day, the feeling was a physical weight, a suffocating anxiety that made the idea of going to his office in the World Trade Center's North Tower feel impossible. He picked up the phone and told his boss he wouldn't be coming in. He couldn't explain why, just that he felt incredibly unwell. A few hours later, his decision, born from a nameless fear, saved his life. He doesn't claim to be psychic or to have any special powers. He simply says that the worst day of his life was also the day he learned the most important lesson. Always trust your gut. At number 9, we travel to Italy for a story about a dream that became a terrifying reality. For 3 consecutive nights, a woman in a small Italian town was haunted by the same vivid nightmare. In her dream, she watched a familiar building in her neighborhood crumble to the ground, its walls collapsing into a cloud of dust and debris. Each morning, she would wake up shaken, but would eventually dismiss it as just a dream. On the 4th day, however, the nightmare bled into reality. The very building from her dream collapsed, exactly as she had seen it in her sleep. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, but the incident left the community in shock and the woman with an unshakable new belief. She still lives in that same town, but now she never, ever ignores her dreams. Next up, at number 8, we go to San Francisco in the year 1906. In the cold, dark hours before dawn on April 18th, something strange was happening across the city. Long before the first tremors of the great earthquake began, countless people woke up suddenly from a deep sleep. They weren't woken by a noise or a shake, but by a shared, inexplicable feeling of pure terror. From different neighborhoods, in different homes, men, women, and children all experienced the same sudden jolt of panic at the exact same hour. Moments later, the ground began to heave, and San Francisco was torn apart by one of the most destructive earthquakes in American history. The event became one of the earliest and most widespread recorded cases of mass intuition, a collective premonition that science, even today, still struggles to explain. How could so many people feel the same impending doom at the same time? Our story at number 7 takes us to the vast, wild landscapes of Alaska. For generations, the indigenous communities there have spoken of a phenomenon that technology can't detect. They say that just before an earthquake, the land breathes. It's not a violent shake, but a subtle, almost imperceptible shift beneath their feet, a low-frequency vibration that modern seismographs are too crude to register. It's a feeling, a deep hum that resonates through the body. For them, this breath is the Earth's final warning before it unleashes its power. Time and time again, those who have learned to listen to this ancient signal have been able to move to safer ground just moments before the disaster hits. While our world relies on sophisticated alerts and high-tech instruments, this story reminds us that intuition might just be the world's oldest and most reliable warning system. Coming in at number 6, we have the fisherman who sensed a storm in a clear sky. Off the coast of India, The day began with perfect sailing conditions. The sun was shining, the sky was a brilliant blue, and the sea was as calm as glass. It was the kind of day that promised a bountiful catch. Yet one by one, groups of experienced local fishermen began turning their boats around and heading back to shore. To onlookers, it made no sense. There were no dark clouds on the horizon, no change in the wind, but the fishermen felt it. They described it as a wrongness in the air, a subtle shift in the pressure, a feeling that the ocean was holding its breath. They couldn't explain it, but their instincts, honed over a lifetime at sea, screamed danger. Hours later, a ferocious, unpredicted cyclone tore through the region. Every boat that had stayed out on the water perished. Every boat that had heeded the silent warning and returned to the harbor survived. At number 5, we have the heartbreaking story of a diary entry that predicted a tragedy. In the Philippines, a teenage girl sat down with her diary the night before a big trip. With a sense of unease she couldn't articulate, she wrote a chillingly prophetic sentence. Something terrible will happen on the water tomorrow. The next day, she and her family boarded a passenger ferry. As the journey progressed, disaster struck. The ferry capsized and sank, leading to a tragic loss of hundreds of lives. The girl was among the survivors, and her diary was later recovered. That single sentence, written out of a vague but powerful premonition, became a piece of haunting evidence in the investigation. It was a testament to a feeling that foresaw a catastrophe. After that day, she never wrote anything like it again. Number 4 on our list is a powerful example of nature's incredible sixth sense. In December 2004, just moments before a massive tsunami devastated coastlines across the Indian Ocean, something remarkable was observed in Sri Lanka. Animals began to act erratically. Elephants, normally placid, suddenly broke their heavy chains and stampeded for higher ground. Dogs that loved their daily walks on the beach refused to leave their homes, whining and hiding. Flocks of birds took to the sky and vanished inland. While tourists and locals enjoyed the serene morning on the coast, the animal kingdom was in a state of high alert. They sensed the coming danger long before any human did. When the colossal waves finally crashed ashore, the human toll was catastrophic. But observers later noted that, incredibly, almost no wild animals were found among the dead. Nature had listened to the Earth's warning, while humans, tragically, did not. Our number 3 story takes us to Indonesia, and a father whose sudden fear saved his entire family. He was driving his wife and children for a fun day out at their favorite beach. The car was filled with laughter and excitement. But halfway through the journey, an intense and inexplicable tightness gripped the father's chest. A cold dread washed over him, so powerful he felt he couldn't breathe. Without a word of explanation to his confused family, he abruptly turned the car around and drove home. His family was upset, not understanding why their beach day was ruined. A few hours later, the news broke. A massive tsunami, the same one from our previous story, had obliterated the very beach they were heading toward. His split-second decision, driven by a gut feeling he couldn't ignore, had saved all their lives. From that day on, he never questioned a sudden feeling of fear again. At number 2, we return to the moment a nation was shaken. In Japan, a woman was jolted awake at exactly 2:40 in the morning. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she was filled with a sense of pure, unadulterated terror. But there was nothing to explain it. The house was silent. There was no tremor, no strange sound, not even a gust of wind. It was just a raw, primal fear that had pulled her from a deep sleep. Confused and unsettled, she couldn't go back to sleep. Hours later, the 9.0 magnitude Tohoku earthquake struck, triggering a devastating tsunami and causing one of the worst natural disasters in modern history. Her home was far enough from the coast to be untouched, but she never forgot that night. She believes with absolute certainty that her body felt the deep, subtle shifts in the earth long before the quake actually erupted, sending a silent alarm that woke her from her sleep. And finally, our number one spot isn't about a single incident, but a global pattern that's impossible to ignore. Across different countries, different cultures, and different disasters, survivors have reported experiencing the exact same physical symptoms moments before a catastrophe. They describe a sudden, intense pressure in their skull, a heart that begins racing for no reason, and an unshakable feeling of dread that seems to come from nowhere. These aren't just feelings of anxiety. They are specific physiological responses that people from the 1906 San Francisco earthquake to the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami have all described. When a pattern repeats itself on a global scale, across decades and continents, it stops being a coincidence. It becomes a message of biological signal that our modern lives have taught us to ignore. So what do these 10 stories tell us? They reveal a truth we often dismiss. Intuition isn't magic. It's biology. It's an ancient survival mechanism buried deep within our DNA, a primal memory from a time when sensing a change in the wind or a vibration in the earth was the only thing that kept us alive. The world shifts, the air changes, the earth whispers, and a quiet voice inside us says, "Move, wake up, leave now." That warning is real. The only question is, are we listening? If these stories made you rethink your own instincts, or if you've ever felt a warning you couldn't explain, stay with us here at WonderBox TV. Your intuition might be the oldest mystery we still carry. Subscribe, and let's keep exploring the unexplained together. Thanks for watching.